Asajj Ventress has officially made her Bad Batch debut, but was there a point to all this? Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sector for Nerds. Today I'm here to give you guys my thoughts on Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 9, The Harbinger. First up, I want to give a shout out to Caleb's Cave of Collectibles for being a $5 or above tier member. You can also become a tier member as well by clicking on the link in the description below. And also, before we begin, you guys, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I got a lot of content going up on the channel right now, you guys. You definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, so let's talk about the episode that a lot of us have been waiting for. I'm gonna say this right out of the gate. I absolutely adored this episode. Definitely in like my top 10 favorite episodes of this show. However, the one thing that I wish we would have gotten that we didn't get is how on earth Ventress is alive. Because for those who don't know, there was a book called The Dark Disciple that basically concludes Asajj Ventress' story in the Clone Wars since Disney canceled it. Thanks, Disney. And it was a really good story as well. Like, honestly, it's probably my favorite Star Wars novel that I've ever read. It's that good. But at the very end of it, Asajj Ventress definitively dies, and Obi-Wan and Quinlan Vos both bury her. Like, it's that definitive. And then all of a sudden, the Bad Batch trailer happens, and I'm like, what? Bro, this season is gonna be lit.
I wasn't planning on killing you.
What?
But you're making it very tempting.
What? Holy no way! What? Now, if you guys watched last week's video, you'll remember that I said, man, I really hope that next week I don't come on here and say, man, they should have just left her dead. And I'm not ready to say that, but I'm still not out of that realm either, because they never gave us a reason. The only thing we got was the very end of the episode when she says, I've got a few lives left. What is she, a cat? I don't know, just something about this just didn't seem right. And it's funny because in the episode, they find records of Asajj Ventress, so the Bad Batch know who she is. Surely they would have had on some kind of file that she was dead. Because once again, like, Jedi were there and present when she died. Surely something would have been reported. Something to make the Bad Batch go, well, wait a minute, how are you still alive? Because I can understand, right, where, like, the Bad Batch wouldn't really care if she was alive or not. But if, like, they had information, they could be like, well, wait a minute, what's your story here? Why do you want Omega so bad? How are you alive? Blah, 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 blah. And then it started to make me go like, okay, well, wait a minute. Why couldn't we have put Ahsoka Tano in this spot? Like, okay, I get maybe you want to have someone in there, right, who's kind of more like a mercenary, someone who's force sensitive, who would know about the force, someone that the Bad Batch couldn't trust. Like, if it was Ahsoka Tano, they probably could have trusted her right away, right? They knew who she was. But I also guess it just depends on where in the timeline we're at, like how soon does Ahsoka Tano get back into the fight? Here's the thing, right? Like, I remember, you guys, during the Kenobi series when they said, when everyone was wondering what they did with the Grand Inquisitor, and they were like, oh, don't worry, guys, we followed the canon, don't worry, just watch the show. And we did, and I still thought it was stupid. And I'm really hoping that they didn't pull that same crap on us, because it looks like they have right now. Because I remember I read an article of someone that worked on the show saying, don't worry, guys, we followed the canon of Dark Disciple. And again, I liked this episode, but man, a lot of us were looking for answers, and you didn't give us any. So if I am going to give Lucasfilm the benefit of the doubt, and considering that it is their animation division and they make such good stuff, maybe I will give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is a way to reintroduce Asajj Ventress into the story, into everything that's going on, and then whatever the next animated show is, like maybe it's something that takes place around this time period, or maybe there's another, like a live action show that they're going to do around this time period that's gonna involve Asajj Ventress. And then from there, we can better explain what happened to her. Because at the very end, things were left open-ended, and I do appreciate that. I think a lot of us were just expecting something when it came to, well, why is she still alive? But you guys, to talk positively about the episode, because I know it feels like I've been pretty negative so far, I loved this episode. I loved Ventress training Omega and trying to test her M count. I loved the battle between her and the Bad Batch. That was like some of the best fight choreography that they've ever done in animation. I like Pabu as a planet, and I like that it's kind of become their sanctuary. Unfortunately, I have a scary suspicion now more than ever that the Empire is going to find Pabu, especially since Ventress said, "You're not as safe as you think you are." Ventress had the Bad Batch beat, and it wasn't until Omega came back where cooler heads kind of prevailed, but she says, "I am many things, but I'm not your enemy." Showing that, Ventress has a little bit of good in her. And to Omega's credit, right? Like she said, hey, if she was as dangerous as you said she is, then why didn't she kill you guys when she had the chance? And Omega wants to be able to give Ventress a chance because, like even when Crosshair protests, it's like, well, I gave you a chance, didn't I? I do love the part, though, when Omega does show up alone with Batcher. And they get on the boat and they're out there, and you see all the members of the Bad Batch with binoculars, and they're just looking through them, and Wrecker's looking through them, and Ventress immediately spots him, and Wrecker's like, how does she know? That's my guy right there. Wrecker, I need more standout moments from you, my dude. You're like my favorite Bad Batch member, but I feel like since season 1, you haven't been given much here. This episode, you were at least given a little bit more. Yeah, Wrecker was very much against trusting Asajj Ventress in this episode. But you guys, I think it's time we get into my Bad Batch Member of the Week segment. Who do we give it to this week? Because I feel like this episode, very much about Asajj Ventress, very much about Omega. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, okay, I could give it to Omega, because of the stuff that she went through in this episode. But there's actually someone else that I want to give it to. And this might be a wild card this week that you might not expect. I want to give it to Hunter. And I'm going to tell you why. Hunter, like everybody else, was very much against the idea of trusting Asajj Ventress, and with every reason. I mean, taking into account as well the fact that they just got Omega back from being taken from the Empire, right? So they don't know, Omega could be taken again. They've already lost her on 2 separate occasions now, once to Cad Bane, once to the Empire. Who's to say that Asajj Ventress isn't going to do the same, and especially the fact that she's a separatist war criminal. But you know what Hunter did in this episode that was probably the most crucial thing that he could have done to get everybody on good terms, and that's putting trust in Omega. When there was that lack of trust, what happened? They got into a fight. But Ventress, when Omega shows up alone, she's like, oh, I'm surprised that you showed up alone. I assume that they told you everything about me. And Omega says that they did. And I think Ventress in that moment was kind of like, huh, okay, so clearly they trust her a little bit. But I think even when Ventress spots them out in the distance with the binoculars, I don't think she was necessarily mad at it, because I think surely she has to understand where the Bad Batch are coming from. The fact that they care so much about Omega, they want to look after her. So I don't necessarily think that she hated that. And then at the end of the episode, when Ventress is like, you're making things worse, when they're going up against that giant sea monster, as Wrecker says, why is there always a giant monster everywhere we go? But Ventress tells them, you need to call off your friends, they're causing more harm than good right now. And sure enough, Omega contacts Hunter, and Hunter stands down when Omega was in danger. So that's where I give massive props to Hunter this week. Ventress connects with the creature, kind of the way that Ezra would. And then we get the end of the episode where Omega asks, do I have a high M count? I wrote in my notes, Omega doesn't have a high M count. Ventress is lying. Yeah, and sure enough, she was. Because once Omega goes away, Ventress is straight up with them. You need someone that can teach her. She said something along the lines of what, the best thing for Omega is to be away from you guys or something? And then warns them they're not as safe as they think they are, and she's got more lives to spare, whatever that means. Ooh, one thing that I forgot to talk about, you guys, during the middle of their training between Ventress and Omega, there was a scene that very much paralleled Empire Strikes Back between Luke and Yoda, and it comes to lifting the X-Wing. Luke saying, you want the impossible, and he just walks off, and Yoda uses the Force to raise the X-Wing out of the water. They basically had that same moment here with Omega and her trying to connect with nature, and Omega's like, I bet you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know any of this stuff. Why should I listen to you? And Ventress walks over, and puts her hand out and all the, fish that are in the water come circling around the boat. I thought that was pretty cool. Also, the other thing I want to talk about real quickly is Ventress's lightsaber. I made a whole video on this, so maybe if I remember to, I'll leave the link in the description below for that, but that is not her Dark Disciple lightsaber. That's just one of her Clone Wars Sith lightsabers, but it's now yellow. It's another thing I wish we would have gotten some answers to. So in conclusion, I really liked this episode, you guys. I would like to emphasize that because I know at the beginning I came off as Negative Nancy a little bit, and I think I have every right to be. Really good episode, but I really would have liked some answers to my questions. But again, if there is a plan to follow up on this, then cool. If not, then she probably just should have stayed dead, shouldn't she? As much as I enjoyed this episode, if this is the only appearance that we ever get again from Asajj Ventress post Revenge of the Sith, then in hindsight, maybe it wasn't worth it. But I'm very curious to see what you guys thought of this episode. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. That is going to wrap us up for this week, you guys. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel, become a member today, plenty of perks. You can find out more with the link in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.
But you're making it very tempting.
What? Holy